Welcome to White Label American Podcast. This is a podcast that brings you bold, in-depth interviews with interesting people that are mostly immigrants taking down artificial walls one story at a time. This is a podcast that empowers immigrants to share their stories and listen to those of others. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another episode of White Label American. Thank you all for joining us today. And for everyone who's been giving us 5 stars, showing us love on social media, and sharing our episodes, we say thank you. Shukran, Dankeschön, and Umbana. So, if you're not doing that, please be doing it. And for our new listeners, we invite you to participate in sharing the love. Keep supporting, because we are indie podcasters and we need as much support as possible. Now, if you don't know where to go to www.whitelabelamerican.com and show some love. You see the review button there. Drop an awesome review, 5 stars only. Don't be a hater and give us 4 stars. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you see the donate button right there. You can donate as much as the spirit leads you to do. Don't be like those people who are giving Trump money and then you can give a hardworking black gentleman some good dollars. We'll take euros too and pound sterling. Now, don't be giving crooks money and then you don't give good people money. So, with that being said, you can also buy merch also. We have new merch. We have mugs that just came out, whichever colors that you want. But we put white on the social media. It doesn't mean we are sending some people messages, but it's just what we put on social media. So, show love. You can join Patreon. We have extra hidden podcasts only on Patreon. We talk about shows that we like. Latest is The Last of Us, and we have other stuff coming up. So, go out there. Enjoy, and for as low as $3, join our Patreon. With that being said, let's meet today's guest. I have the honor of bringing someone who represents, I don't think, I haven't had anybody like this before, but I met this sister virtually, and I just fell in love with the work that she's doing. She is Brazilianish, Egyptianish, and there's a little sprinkle of French interwoven in the mix. Identity crisis is well frequented in her world, and she decided to explore the premises with other fellow dwellers through her podcast titled Inbetweenish. I love that title. Great title. I need to, we'll find out how she came about it. So, with that being said, let's meet Beatriz Nour. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you for that introduction. I'm good. I am excited to be here. This is my first guest appearance, so I guess I get to see the other side of things, how it is to guest versus host. So, it's an interesting experience.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, and you're doing great work. I love listening to your podcast. It's a beautiful journey that always takes me on, and there's so many artificial walls that each episode removes. So I'm really honored to have you here, and I'm pleased, with the work that you're doing. So keep doing amazing and beautiful work. So let's dive into the very beginning. What is the meaning of your name, and is there a story behind it?
Yes, actually, there is a meaning to my name, Beatrice. It's Beatrice is a Latin name, and it means blessed, and also the one who brings joy. And I'm not sure everyone would agree with that when they meet me,
Right.
but that is the meaning. My grandma named me because my grandma named me. My father wanted to give me an ancient Egyptian name. I'm very grateful he didn't do that. And Noor is it means light in Arabic.
I've heard that before. Maybe
It
it's on
means
your
light in Arabic,
podcast.
but also in Turkish, it also means light, like a couple of different languages.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, now I remember now. When I was in Bahrain, yeah, I took Arabic 1 and 2, and I did well. I got A's in both classes, by the way.
mhm.
And yes, that's where I saw Noah light.
Light, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
That,
exactly.
huh.
So you speak a bit of Arabic then?
I haven't spoken over 12 years, 10 years. Yeah, so
Mm.
it's in the brain. It
It's still
exists.
there.
It's
Yeah,
still there.
yeah, for sure.
It's kind of
Well,
like
you started off with shukran in the beginning, so
yes,
yeah,
it's
it's
kind of like
definitely still there.
John Wick. In moment of danger, it comes out. Ha. Yeah. So you were grateful that your dad didn't get his choice of name. Why were you grateful?
Oh, I don't know. Have you met many people with like an ancient Egyptian name nowadays? I think that would be like like a open invitation to bullying, you know? So
Hmm.
I'm grateful I don't have an ancient Egyptian name. No, I love my name. I mean, I think it's funny, just this week I attended a live uh what's it called? Like a live podcast episode event
Oh, okay.
where they were
Live streaming.
well, no, it wasn't a streaming because this was recorded in 2017.
Okay.
It's an episode from Kerning Cultures. Kerning Cultures is a network of podcasts in the Middle East, and they had this episode called "What's in a Name,"
Mm.
and they were talking about um, Arabs who go abroad to the West, particularly the US, who have, names that are easy, like, common in Arabic, but very hard to pronounce for a Westerner or for Americans. So they end up like having to like change their names or accommodate or, you know, yeah, change the sound of their name or change or adopt a new name. Like, very often and Ahmed, which is a very common name in the Muslim world and in the Middle East, if they go to the US, sometimes they'll adopt the name Ed because when
Oh,
they present themselves, they say like, "Oh, I'm Ahmed," and people will hear like, "I'm Ed," which is like it's not the same name. But I
that's
had kind of
news
like
to
the
me.
opposite. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I never.
Um,
I mean, remember I'm of a totally different background, so there's no way you say your name is Ahmed if I meet you and I'll hear Ed. It's Ed, and I also have a nephew who's Ed, so it's just
yeah.
gonna be. I'll be like, what? Your name is? It's the opposite. If I meet an Ahmed who addresses himself as Ed, I'm like, what's wrong with you, man? It's yeah. So it's totally, but I get it because I know a lot of people from China, India who have similar stories of changing their
Mm,
names, or I heard an English quote unquote English name, what we in Nigeria call as refer to as English names over here in America, and then when you build a relationship with that person, and then the person will later on tell you like, oh my name is, then you get there, you're like, wait a minute, this your real
mm.
name, and then
Yeah.
okay, I get it. So yeah, so I've actually had someone on my podcast who admitted that, and she now lives in China, and when we first met, the name that I knew her by for a while on campus was, typical white woman name in America. And one day I noticed that wasn't the name that she wrote on her book. And I was like,
Mm.
girl, what's going on? And she said, oh,
Yeah.
people can't pronounce my name. I said, what's your name?
Mm.
And she told me, that's an easy name. But it's like those of us who come, who weren't born
Mm.
here, who are from outside, we used to accents and pronunciations. It's easy for us to pick those names, I guess, because to me, her name did not sound difficult to pronounce. It was easy for me. The moment she said it, I was, oh yeah, I can pronounce that. But
Mm.
every time I hear these stories, I'm like, wow, is it really that difficult for someone? But those people, it's never difficult for them to pronounce Tatanovsky, though. That's what still baffles me. So I don't know, but I get it though. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there are certain I mean, every language has its own sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, for example, um, in Portuguese, there's the I don't even know how to say it. Like, how you say pão, it sounds like it's an N. It's not really an N.
Mm.
But even like in Arabic, you have like the ayn, you have the kha, you have these
Yeah.
different sounds that don't necessarily
That's
exist
what I struggle with.
in the English language.
Mm-hmm.
But like, for example, like the kha is very common in Dutch. So so I had a bit of the opposite issue because I'm born in France, and so my name Beatrice in France is quite common. Not common, but like it's not unusual, I guess.
Yeah.
And in Brazil as well, it's a common name in Brazil, in Latin America in general. But when I moved to Egypt, there are no Beatrices in Egypt, even though we have all the sounds of my name, but it was just like an unusual name there. So I would get called like all sorts of different names. So I had a bit of the opposite experience to, I guess, like Arabs that move to the West and have to adopt a name. When I was younger, I really didn't like my name because people would butcher it all the time. And I don't know, I'm sure you have this experience, like when Nigerians will say your name, it's very different than when Americans will say your name, and you have a different, you react differently to when your name is pronounced differently. So when I speak to Brazilians, it's different. Like my feeling about it is different. But in Egypt, when people are mispronouncing it, like I had a complex relationship. I didn't like my name when I was younger. I've grown out of that. Like I do like my name now, but yeah, it's definitely interesting the relationship you have to different languages and people from those countries in terms of how they pronounce your name. It's a very personal thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the first thing you get when you're born is a name.
And then that's
So,
true. I think. Well, before I go to what I was going to say about my name in Nigeria, your name is the first time I have met someone with Beatrice as with the Z. I think in Nigeria is the ICE that I'm used to because Beatrice, I think we call it Beatrice. That's how we say it in Nigeria. Yeah. So I've seen a few of that in Nigeria. And when it comes to my name, we have a lot of ethnic groups in Nigeria, about 300. And I'm from a minority ethnic group, not from the big three that most people are familiar with. And I was born in the middle part of the country, and then I moved to the southern part, which is where I'm from. But I lived in a different state where I'm not also a majority tribe. And then, but my name stood out still. But it's looking back now that I begin to realize some of these things. So I had always been an outsider in a way. And when my name was pronounced, everywhere there was different. It was never pronounced the right way in most places. But I think in Benin City, I got for the most part, it was said correctly. It was said Raphael. And then I moved to Ibadan, and that's where the main differentiation began. It was in Benin City. Sometimes I got a Raphael. A Raphael. So I don't know where the A came from, but a Raphael. Some people said a Raphael, and then I in Ibadan, some people said Raphaeli. Started at the E, started coming at the end now, Raphaeli, and then they will change it where my middle name Oyin Laifa they were now switching it to Omo Lai. They wanted me to be a Yoruba, so it was like they were trying to adopt, they were trying to make it a Yoruba name by all means, and they won't be able to pronounce the Oyin, and I'll be because I have memories of being at public places waiting for my name to be called, and because they will read your whole names, and they will say Omo Laifa. I'm like, who's the Omo here? I'm not. That's not my name. And the person will be arguing with me that I don't know my own name, and I'm like, why? So there was clashes like that, and then there were. I remember the first time I signed up at the public school that I finished at. The first question I was asked by the vice principal was, "Are you from Ghana or Liberia?" Because we had Liberian refugees. Based on my name, Raphael Harry, that was a name they had associated with Liberians or Ghanaians.
Hmm.
and they never identified me as a Nigerian until I graduated from that school. That was the way they interpreted that name. That I wasn't from that country, I wasn't from that area, and I did not speak Yoruba. So
Hmm.
disqualifiers, and there was just stuff like that. So it's fascinating how names work. I don't know
Yeah.
what would have happened if I was in the northern part of the country. I need to talk to somebody who had similar names to mine, of what is from my part of the country and lived in the northern part, in the north, to see if their story is similar to mine. But just because they could pronounce the names doesn't mean they still accepted you. It's weird how it works in, in different places. They still did. It's just weird how the system works in some of our places. But it
Yeah.
just reminded me. Oh, one quick thing about your name. Somebody, one of my most recent guests just pointed this out. Had never thought about this. So in Germany, it's not common. It's uncommon to have middle names.
Hmm.
Is that also a thing with you guys?
Well, it depends on what you mean by you guys.
Sorry, I mean
It's actually an
Egyptians
interesting
or
question.
Brazilians. I know Brazilians tend to have a lot of names, like the soccer players I'm familiar
Yeah.
with. So, did you fall?
Yeah.
Which side did you fall on when it comes to the names, the Brazilian or the Egyptian?
It's a funny question that you asked that because I that's actually something I've always had trouble with is my paperwork because
Mm,
my name in I'm a dual citizen, and my name in my Brazilian passport and paperwork is different than my name in my Egyptian passport and paperwork,
oh,
because the philosophy in Brazil, and I believe this is in Latin South America in general, is you'll have maybe a first and second name.
yes,
Sometimes it'll be like Ana Maria, and then two last names. So
yes.
the
I've
last
met
name
people
will
like that.
be, yeah, the mother's family basically, and then the mother's family name, sorry, surname, and then the father's family name or surname. And so usually ends up being four names altogether, which, and I really like that because like I think I have a bit of an issue with like only taking the father's side. It takes two to make
Mm-hmm.
a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, I mean, like the mother's the one who carried the child. Like, why is her name nowhere? So I really appreciate that in Brazilian culture, the norm is to actually take the mother's surname as well as the father's surname. Now, that was not the case with me because I think my parents wanted to keep it somewhat consistent. In Egypt, the philosophy is different. So you don't have two first names. So just to clarify, not everyone in Brazil will have two first names. So some people will, and
Okay.
other people will just get one first name. But everyone will get the mother's family name and then the father's family name. In Egypt, it's different because it's just different. It's very patriarchal. So you have
Mm-hmm.
your first name, you have your father's first name, you have your grandfather's first name, and then you have your family name. And so that means that in my Egyptian passport, I have two more names that I don't have in my Brazilian paperwork.
Wow.
And that's actually proven, like I've had to prove that I'm the same person at government offices, at airports and stuff like that when I travel because my names are different.
Mm-hmm.
So I took, yeah, in my Brazilian passport it's just like my first name and my father's family name, and then in my Egyptian it's all those four names so all together. Um, so yeah, it's a different naming philosophy, and different cultures and different religions as well have different naming philosophies. So when you're mixed, I think your parents have to make this choice, and then you kind of have to live with whatever they chose, or try and like not correct it, but like if you grow up and you decide like, no, I don't want this naming philosophy, I prefer this one, then you can change it. But it's hard to change your name. It's a lot of paperwork,
Yeah. Hmm.
even in the
That's
sense of like sorry.
no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, there are in certain countries and in certain cultures and religions, like when you get married, you'll take your husband's name.
Yes.
Um, in Islam, you don't take your husband's name. You maintain your family name, your
Oh,
family's surname.
okay.
So yeah, they're just different naming philosophies. I wonder what the root of all this is, but it's definitely different. Yeah.
That's something that needs to be. I need to explore that too. What's the root of all this? Because I wasn't aware that in Islam, the woman does not have to take the husband's name.
It's not does not have to. She does not. Like
Oh,
it's
she doesn't.
she does not. No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
actually seen as quite unusual if you do.
Wow,
So yeah,
that's news to me. Now I'm thinking because there are a lot of Muslims around me in Nigeria, and huh, um, well, that might be. Yeah, might. You see, this is why it's good to talk to people from around and from everywhere, and because if you just have only one experience and think this is it, this is how it must be for everybody, then you just have an artificial wall that you've set up, and you don't get it, and you you start thinking that everybody's doing it wrong, and
yeah.
yeah. But everyone listening, if you have any examples to share, yeah, please share with us, and I love to learn because now I've learned something that I wasn't aware of this. So, and I grew up with so many Muslims, and now I'm trying to juggle my memory now to see if I may have come across this information at any point in time, and maybe I was so deep in the patriarchy that I was like, "No, woman, I ain't listening to this. You must take a man's name." Maybe that happened back then, but honestly, I can't recall. And so this is yeah.
It's actually
Thank you.
it's a quite a Christian practice to take your husband's name.
Hmm. And that I'm not surprised. Honestly, I'm not surprised about that. And you know what? Wow. This is why I love the first question I always start with. But anyway, that's let's dive into the next question. I'll definitely have to come back to that again. So you've already given an answer to the next what technically should have been my second official question. But we're still gonna go there. So, can you officially introduce us to your place of birth and what childhood was like for you?
Oh, we're going all the way back.
Yes. Oh, it's your origin story. We need to know if we're getting a villain or a hero.
So I was born in France, despite being Brazilian Egyptian. I was born in France because my parents lived there at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and when they met, they lived there as well. So yeah, I was born in Paris, and I lived there for the first 3 years of my life. And I think like I definitely didn't realize this when I was younger or growing up, but I think the makeup of my family is a bit unusual in the sense that my father left Egypt as a young adult. Same thing with my mother. She left Brazil, Rio, as a young adult, and they met on a plane. But they met on a plane, but they both lived in France, and they got married there, and I was born there. And despite them having their first languages were respectively Arabic for my father and Portuguese for my mom, their common language was French because they didn't speak each other's language.
Mm.
So I was born in a very francophone household. And so my name, Beatrice in French, was easy in France. Yeah, so that was easy. That was not complicated to pronounce, not unusual. And yeah, lived there for some time, for 3 years, and then me for 3 years. My father lived in France for 22 years, and then eventually my parents decided, you know what, we want to leave France, we want to go somewhere else, one of our countries. And ironically, my father, who's Egyptian, wanted to go to Brazil, and my mother, who's Brazilian, wanted to go to Egypt. And my mom won the argument, and so we moved to Egypt. And yeah, we moved to Egypt. I was I was 3 years old. That's where I learned Arabic, which was my third language, because first I learned French and then I learned Portuguese because my Brazilian grandma would take care of me when I was younger. And then when I moved to Egypt, I learned Arabic and then I learned English. And again, I didn't realize that it was unusual to speak four languages at such a young age. And I do mess up my languages and I make a lot of mistakes and stuff, but it's just kind of the way I was brought up. But yeah, with my parents, it was always French. They were very attached, despite moving to Egypt. We, as a family, were very attached to French culture. I watched I'm a Disney child. I grew up in that era. I was born in the 90s, and I watched everything in French. I watched TV in French. And then going to an American school, I had to learn. Basically, that's when I started learning English. I didn't speak a word when I went to KG in Egypt at an American school. And yeah, that's where English started coming in. And then it became, because it was the language I was being like kind of schooled in academically, it became my language of comfort. I think today I'm more comfortable in English than I am in my other languages, which is very weird to say that because it's not my mother tongue. It's not the language we speak at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what ended up happening. And then I got immersed, as a teenager, you watch like all these shifts, like all my friends speak English. So I was very immersed in like American pop culture, listened to all the artists, like watched all the TV shows, all that stuff. So the cultural influences changed a little. And still my grandma actually lived, my Brazilian grandma, ironically, lived in Egypt before my parents even moved to Egypt.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. But my grandma was married to someone who was Egyptian before my mom met my dad.
Oh.
He was not my grandfather, and he was not a father figure to my mom, but because they got together and my mom was out of the house and older and stuff. But yeah, that's what happened. So as a result, my Brazilian grandma lived in Egypt and would again watch us a lot when we were younger. So yeah, it was a mix of different things. It's really funny because for example, in certain things in the kitchen, I only know how to say them in French and Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things interacting with things in the street and kind of day-to-day life, I know it more in Arabic. Academically, I know certain things in English and French that I don't know in other languages. So it's a mix of different things. And I'm most comfortable today talking to people who speak some of my languages. Like if someone speaks Arabic and English, I'm more comfortable with that. So yeah, that was kind of my childhood. Very culturally mixed. Very, my parents were. My father is Coptic Christian from Egypt. My mother is Catholic from Brazil, and so we were kind of brought up with those two. They're not different faiths, but they're different, practices of Christianity.
Yes.
And so, for example, it's Easter, so we would celebrate two different Easters and two different Christmases.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, we didn't really go to church. So it was a confusing household looking back, I guess. Confused identity as a household entirely. But it turned out, I think I turned out all right. So it's okay.
You did. So it seems like this. It's not uncommon to see Brazilian Egyptian marriages or household because until I came across you, that was the first time I heard of a Brazilian Egyptian couple, and then I was like, wow. Now I'm hearing your grandmother also married to an Egyptian. I'm like, wait a minute. Was there something going on that I never heard about of Egyptians and Brazilians having something going on for some time? Like, wow, this is You know, I think relationships are not as black and white as many. It's just I'm always fascinated to see or hear of such um, history, like the way sometimes people always talk of interracial relationships, and it's always people like sometimes people just talk as if it's only black and white couples, and I'm like, no, it transcends more than that. Like people have been interacting with others for who knows how long, and like when I mentioned, there's an African sister who's of Brazilian Egyptian heritage, and I'm trying to tell somebody about your podcast, and I see someone light up like, wait, what? Brazilian Egyptian? Where? How? How did it happen?
On a plane, apparently.
Yeah, on a plane, So it's beautiful. Yeah, it wasn't just a one-time thing. There's other Brazilian Egyptians apparently happening, and if there's Brazilian Egyptians, that means there's probably Tunisian or Argentinians, and probably there's more and more that's expanding, and the universe gets more and more smaller, as they say. So it's just beautiful hearing you talk about it. That's the point I'm making. So,
I mean, there isn't a huge Brazilian Egyptian community. There is a small community. I grew up kind of like around this community in Egypt. There is, I think like maybe we were a group of like 30 couples, I guess, that were Brazilian Egyptians.
Wow.
Couples that were, Brazilians married to Egyptians, 20, 30, that we knew about, because like there is a Brazilian embassy and presence in Egypt. And because there's a small Brazilian population there, they would do a lot of different events. So that's where we would kind of like all gather and meet and stuff. But there is a very big Lebanese Brazilian population that lives in Brazil. There's a lot of Lebanese people that immigrated to Brazil.
Hey, Lebanese.
And they're now very integrated.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, right? Like they're everywhere. Yeah.
Shout out to the Lebanese. Yeah, we have Lebanese in Nigeria. There was a Lebanese shipmate of mine in the Navy, and I remember one day we were talking. We fell out now. He unfortunately fell out. He fell into the right-wing MAGA thing, unfortunately. But before then, one day we were having a conversation, and somebody brought up DR Congo, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I got a cousin there." I was like, "What? Yeah, I got a cousin there." And he was like, "Actually, I got cousins in DR Congo," and then he started listing African countries. And I've been to Nigeria too. I was like, "Man, this guy's been to more African countries than I have." Man, I don't like you, man. I started being jealous. I'm like, "Man, get out of here, man. I don't want to see you no more. No, don't be coming around me." But it became clear why he could hang out amongst the Africans. I was like, man, Lebanese, you guys, there's hardly any African country we can't find Lebanese, and then diaspora, they're everywhere. Like, so shout out to them. And we love Lebanese food in Nigeria. We love Lebanese food. But if you meet a Nigerian who just came out of Nigeria for the first time, if you want to see a good reaction, take them to go eat shawarma and watch that Nigerian's reaction. You're gonna have a good laugh, because they're gonna be like, "What is this? What is this? This is not shawarma. This is nonsense. This is not shawarma. This is not shawarma. No, we have real shawarma in Nigeria." I'm like, "Oh man, somebody got to tell you that the Lebanese there somehow made it different. They kind of made it." They made it for Nigeria, and we didn't know that there's different types of shawarma, because I did the same thing when I arrived in Bahrain. And I tried shawarma for the first time. I was like, this looks like what they call burrito in America. And they said, "No, it's shawarma." I said, "Nah, man, this guy's made a mistake." I was like, "Ah, damn, okay, I did the same thing too. Nah, I know better." But it was funny seeing every Nigerian come to Bahrain, and they were like, "Man, I want to eat shawarma. They have shawarma here." Yeah. And then, "Oh, what? My guy, you say you're buying me shawarma. This is not shawarma. We have real shawarma in Nigeria. Come to Nigeria, we'll show you shawarma." I said, "Oh, man. Yeah, this is..." So blame the Lebanese for that. So, sticking with your childhood, this is going to be an interesting question for you. What do you consider your favorite childhood memory to be?
you need to give me some time to think about that. You can't just spring a question
No,
like
that's the
that.
point. At this moment, what do you consider your favorite childhood memory to be? I don't give guests time to think about that. Even if I give them time to think about that, they're still going to be like, man, I have like 50 memories. I say, you see, so that's why I don't give you time. Right now, at this moment, bang, go, and you can pull like two memories. If that'll make it easier for you.
I think I mean, like the first thing that came to mind off the top of my head, there's two memories.
There you go.
The first, I guess, is like, every summer we would go to a particular beach on the Mediterranean Sea in Egypt. And my parents both come from like coastal cities. I don't, but they both do. And I think like they pass down their love for the sea to me and swimming and, just being in the water. So we would always go there and spend like a week in summer. And I think that particular beach, it's called Marsa Matruh. And there's a hotel there that we would always go to growing up. I haven't been there in more than a decade, but it was yeah, really special, I think. Very good memories with like, siblings and friends and parents there. And the
What
other
city was
memory
that?
called Marsa Matruh.
Oh, okay. I thought you said that was the
It's
hotel.
on the no, that's the hotel was called Bosit Hotel. But like,
Okay.
yeah, the Marsa Matruh, it's a city on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea in Egypt,
Okay.
closer to the closer to the Libya border of Egypt.
Oh, so to the west.
Because Egypt has like two, seas, the Red Sea, which
Yeah.
is very different than the Mediterranean Sea. I think the Mediterranean Sea you go if you love to swim, and the Red Sea you go if you love to like see sea life, basically. Snorkeling, diving, that's all on the Red Sea, and then swimming, beautiful beaches, like sand, softy beaches, turquoise water, that's on the north coast in Egypt. So yeah, that's one of them. And I think the second one is one in Brazil. I spent my sixth birthday in Brazil, and my mom and my grandma and my great grandma, because I had the chance to meet her. She had a very long life. They threw me a birthday party in Brazil, and in my great grandma's house, like right on the, she had a beautiful apartment on the right on the beach in Rio, and it was. I think the next day, it was the next day after the birthday, actually. The birthday was great. I'm not complaining, but it was the next day after the birthday because they'd go all out and deck everything out and stuff. And we took all the balloons and put it in like this room. And my sister and I were just like stomping on them and, popping balloons. I'm sure it was very annoying to the adults, but the kids had fun, So that was a very fond memory. The day after their birthday. So yeah, that's those are two childhood memories that I'm very fond of. Yep.
Fascinating.
Haven't thought about that in a long time, but
Hey,
it's
see, that's why another reason why I like asking this question, and the way I ask it too, because you
absolutely.
see, I'm pretty sure it makes the guests smile and make them happy, and it also proves an ongoing theory that you all seem attracted to the same thing because somehow the beach always seems to come up. Everybody seems to end up picking the same thing. Either people are going to the beach, some water body, or wildlife park or something outdoor related. It's undefeated. I don't plan it. Even people who are like, I'm prepared. I listen to a couple of episodes. I'm like, okay, and then I ask them, and they're like, oh well, yeah, and I still pick the same. Well, it's like, hey, okay, you see. So,
no, well done with that question.
hey, thank you. So, your parents gave you, instilled the love of the beach well, I'll see life in you. Do you see yourself doing that? Passing it to the next generation going forward.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, if we ever have kids, yeah, for sure. I think it's I mean, um my partner and I live in Dubai. It's a coastal city. I would argue it's a coastal city that doesn't feel like a coastal city because of like the hustle
Yeah.
and all that. But it does have I think I was reading yesterday like 1,800 kilometers, maybe 1,600 kilometers of coastline, basically. So it is a coastal country, actually, beyond just being a
Yeah,
city.
that's true.
And yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, if we were to have kids, we'd definitely pass down the love for beach life and swimming. And I think there's a lot. It's not just about the beach, actually. I think it's just like there's something about being out in nature, right?
Yes.
That is very special and very grounding, I think. So whether that's beach or for some other people it's mountains, that's a very like more foreign form of nature for me. Maybe it doesn't come as naturally, but yeah, for sure we would pass that on, I think. I mean,
So,
I think
oh,
kids today
sorry.
are also no, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, no. Finish. I didn't know. I didn't realize you were still going on.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know, maybe the kids would be more interested in the beach through the iPhone. You know what I mean? Like kids are obsessed with their screens today, so who knows?
I would say don't underestimate that. I use my kid as an example. She comes out to me when I do my volunteering at the neighborhood garden, and she's been coming out before she could even talk. And they have toys there, so she mostly plays with her toys. But she loves her screen time too. But the point is, whatever they see you doing, they'll do it. They'll come. They will still do their thing. But if you take them out to nature, they'll come. And her school also helps too, because they do a lot of stuff in nature. But nothing beats going to the beach with her mom. She loves that, and like sometimes she'll be the one screaming, "Hey, let's go!" Because once you've given them that experience, they and they see that it's fun. Screen time, they will still have fun with the screen, but once you expose them to that experience, because I've heard many people say, kids don't like today's kids. It's easy to just assume that they will be buried in the screen, but many people forget that many kids are not given the opportunity to go
True. Yeah.
they're not exposed to that experience. But once you expose them to that experience, they're like, wow, this exists? This is fun. Yeah, I want to do this all the time. Why? Yeah, that's it. So once you just give them that experience, they love it. They see that it's a great. Why have you been hiding this from me? And so I remember talking to one of the kids at my kids' school. They were there to pick up her sister, and while they were waiting outside with me and her dad, I was like, she was like, I can't wait for summertime. And I was like, why? She said, because I want ice cream and I go to the park. I said, all right, that's, I can't fault you on that. You got a point there. Ice cream. And she said, I eat all the ice cream I can eat. I was like, okay. Well, you might have to start exercising then. let me tell you. You were doing good until. But the point is, so that's why, like for myself, I'm a big advocate of funding of after school programs and
Absolutely. Yeah.
just give the kids the opportunity, put them out there and. Because at the end of the day, it's the kids from the poorer neighborhoods that get denied all these opportunities. And if you only put a screen in front of them, then that's where they will have, they will see the fun in. But, when I do volunteering, some of the groups that I do volunteering with, and we go to work at the bigger parks in New York City here, and we meet teenagers. I've seen teenagers show up with Jordans, They don't know what to wear to come to events where you get dirty. And we put it in the flyer like, hey, Don't wear what you like to get dirty in. But they've never been to events like this. So at
Mm.
first you see them, they're like, oh, I don't want to step here. I'm trying to avoid stepping. But they start watching their mates having a great time. Like, wow, I'm allowed to make decisions. Like, what am I going to do with this wood? It's like, hey, you decide how we're going to design this. We'll tell you this is what we want to make. Maybe we want to make some benches. We want to paint. But we'll put the kids in charge. We are here to supervise you. That's it. But you decide how the project goes. And the teenagers are like, what? Adults are. So they start getting excited. And you see that. So now the other one who's like, well, I'm wearing nice shoes. I want to take part too. And then they jump in. They jump in. They don't mind if their shoe is getting dirty. And but the thing is, give the kids, they just want the opportunity. So screen time cannot compete with that. It can't. So yeah, that's sorry to go on that tangent, but
No, but I mean, you're the one with the kids, so you know better than me. But that's it's reassuring, you know. If
oh
the
yeah.
kids are asking to go to the park, it's better than asking to watch some Netflix. You know what I mean?
I mean,
So
Netflix
yeah,
has
that's
animal
good.
shows too. I ain't gonna lie, I've watched them too, and I'll be like, oh man, I need to do more. So back to you. Nobody wants to hear about me and my preaching anyway. Um,
No, that's not true. It
Nah,
is your
you
platform.
you're the guest. You're the star. It's not about me. If it was about me, they'll be on my Patreon, hearing me rant. You know, with Ashwin too. I'm not the only person on Patreon. So now you moved around a little bit. You've moved around a few places in life, and that means you got to be the outsider, even in places that would have counted as your home. What was that feeling like for you? I don't know if you could how will I put this? If you could identify feeling like an outsider even when you were a kid. Does that question make sense?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did
absolutely.
that feel to you?
Like an outsider. No, no.
Hey, I set myself up there.
um, to be honest, I don't think I've ever really felt the feeling of being at home, and I
Mm,
think it's something that people who are mixed and have moved around a little. I think it's a very common feeling. I wonder how you feel about it as well. I think I mean, my first home was France, but I was too young to really form memories by the time I left. Like, I have very few memories from when I was 3.
mm,
But in Egypt, I guess I always knew we were a bit different as a family, but I never really had the words for it. And also, I don't think my parents had the words for it, Um, and I moved away from Egypt. So I lived in Egypt 17 years. I was pretty much like raised in Egypt, with
mhm,
uh, France and Brazil always being the kind of go to summer places, because my parents always maintained a very, very strong connection to France. Um, I think my parents, for their different reasons, had a bit of a reject of their own cultures.
mm,
And despite actually moving to Egypt, I mean, most people think like, Middle Easterners will have very big families, but the majority of my dad's family had moved away from Egypt. There was my father's Coptic, his family's Coptic, and there
yeah.
was um, at some point there was like a very big exit for Coptics from Egypt. So there's a Coptic diaspora like um, in different places in the world.
Yeah.
And so when we moved back, I didn't really grow up with any extended family. So I think that didn't help with the integration of things, especially that the family we did have in Egypt was my Brazilian grandma, who's definitely not like assimilated into Egyptian culture.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, it was an interesting. I've always felt like an outsider, I guess. And in Egypt, it was very obvious. I mean, the funny thing is, like in my respective countries, in Egypt and Brazil, I look like I can fit into either. seamlessly. But then my name stands out in Egypt, very much so. And in Brazil, my last name stands out. Nour is not a common last name there. Um, and so, but in Egypt, that was a much bigger thing, I think. I moved to France. I moved back to France when I was 20. And I thought I would fit right in, and I didn't. Because despite speaking the language, and it is my first language, I didn't, and I had a French first name, Beatrice. I don't look French. So that was very commonly pointed out to me.
Hi, everyone. If you're new to the podcast or a returning listener and you enjoy what we are doing here, did you know that you could enjoy more of our content and also support our work via Patreon? For as little as $3 per month, you get access to loads of bonus content that you'll find nowhere and be the first to the latest news. Don't miss out. Go to patreon.com/White Label American Pod or just search for White Label American Podcast on Patreon. Patreon. Sorry, but when you say you don't look French, because when Trevor Noah made that joke about when France won the World Cup and he said, thank Africa, and the French, who was that, ambassador to the United States got mad and wrote that letter chastising Trevor Noah, like the team looked French and all that. I'm like, you should look French if what is looking French? What is that to look French? Because
I guess the better wording of that is I don't look white. I'm not white. You know, I think that's the more accurate wording. I mean, France has people of all from everywhere.
Yeah.
A lot of the places that the French colonized, a lot of people went to France after. And so France is very diverse. But there's definitely a hierarchy to how people are treated, you know. The whiter you are, the better you're treated. That's just a reality. I don't think just of France, you know. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't, I'm not French, first of all. I mean, despite being born there, the law actually changed only 4 years before I was born. So unlike the US and Canada, when if you're born there, you get the nationality, France kind of got rid of that law. It's called le droit du sol just before I was born. So yeah, I don't have that. Growing up, actually, I thought I was French because we spoke French at home, and you know, French culture very much influenced our upbringing, and we weren't, you know, so it was a bit confusing for me. But when I moved back to France, and I thought I was gonna fit right in, you know, French name, I speak the language. I was leaving the kind of like American academic system to study in French, which was very tough. I don't recommend that. But I think it was a shock to me that I was like, oh wow, this is not as easy and seamless as I thought it would be. And the French can be very racist as well. I mean, that's I love France. It will always have a very special place to me. But that's just the reality of France, you know. And not just for me, like I have a lot of friends that I made in France that ironically, most of them are not white French. And they have also struggled a lot with colorism. And, you know, if you have a name that doesn't sound white French, it's also, you're faced with random checks. More, you know, I mean, it's interesting. I lived in France through it was the period I lived there. I went back and lived 5 years there, and it happened to be the period of time through most of the kind of like terrorist attacks that happened in France at the time,
Yeah.
the Charlie Hebdo and then the Bataclan, and one of them was down the street from my house, and I definitely noticed like it was actually unlike what I imagined it would be, in the sense that young people stood up for. I saw people stand up for Arabs, which was very shocking to me. I didn't expect that at all. Obviously, I also saw other people bashing Arabs, but I did see young people standing up for Arabs and kind of really coming together as a result of these events. And that was very pleasant and unexpected to see. I think I lost the question a little.
No, 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 no.
Feeling like an outsider.
No,
Yeah.
your experience all counts to the outside, being treated like an outsider, even though
Mm.
you should count as French, and
I mean,
it's
I don't know if
it's understandable. It's no, I won't say understand. It's relatable in some ways to those who we consider DACA recipients here, who were born here to undocumented parents, so they're not
dreamers.
yeah, the dreamers,
Mm.
and but the only difference is that they are still, for the most part, most people around them consider them Americans, but they just don't have the legal paperwork. But I don't think that many people will say they're not Americans, and they consider themselves Americans, and I consider them Americans. And on this podcast, we don't believe anyone is undocumented, so that's my personal stance too. But it's good to hear the experience from someone who's been through it. Excuse me, so that because people, it's easy to just look from the outside and say, oh, everything is just like this and like that. But so that when there are certain beliefs that I have, so when I say them, when people are like, oh man, you're too harsh, I'm like, yeah, you don't know why I carry such beliefs. But it's not about me, so we'll stick to you. That's the question I was going to ask you, but you can go ahead if you have something to add.
Oh, I think our personal experiences will definitely inevitably shape our views on these things. But I think, there's good and bad in every country.
Yes.
And that was definitely the case when I moved back to France as an adult, where I can experience France more consciously, and I remember a lot more of it. But then I moved to Dubai, to the United Arab Emirates. And here, the kind of the way that the country is, it's very interesting because it's there's a very large percentage of expats, and the majority of people here are expats, actually. So I think here is the first place where, and I still live here, it's the first place where I don't feel like an outsider. And I think it's because we are all outsiders. People don't immigrate to the UAE. People are expats here. They're here for a job, and it's a blend of so many, there's so many different nationalities here, so many different religions. And it's the first place where I feel like I don't question being an outsider, because we're all kind of on the same. We're all outsiders, you know.
I think that's what I felt when I was in Bahrain, and I think that's why I started falling in love with that place, and was almost beginning to draw a map that would see me move to that part of the world. I could just go settle there, and also being a man didn't hurt too. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the Middle East and the Gulf, and the Middle East is quite different, in different regions. But I mean, living in Dubai as a woman, I think I felt a lot more unsafe as a woman in France than I have ever felt in Dubai. Dubai is actually very safe, and as a woman, you don't face a lot of the issues you might face in other places. So I think there's a very big misconception about the Middle East, and the media doesn't help
Yeah.
because it always portrays it in a very negative light. But there's a lot happening here, and there's you just shouldn't believe, I think I would say, most of the things you see in the media about the Middle East, because I think it's always fueled by an agenda without getting political. But yeah, as a woman, I've felt very safe here, and like I've had opportunities, um, and just safe, physically safe, because that's not something I felt in France as a woman.
Yeah, I keep telling some people, but it's hard when you've consumed a lot of certain things and they can't see the other. They can. I'm like, you just have to go there and see for yourself.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I
yeah.
can tell them. So,
Mm.
staying with France, one
Hmm.
quick question. Uh, when did you realize that you weren't French or a French
Ah,
citizen?
um,
Was there any particular incident or situation?
I that's a, like you go through immigration at the airport, when you land anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and you are aware of, like if you're a citizen, or if you're an EU citizen, the line is different than if you're not,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the same everywhere, even if you land in the States as an American,
Mm-hmm.
immigration process is very different than if you are a foreigner, especially if you're Arab. You always get these like random checks and stuff, so random. But traveling is a very big reminder of like you belong to this country,
Mm.
no matter how you feel, but on paper you belong to this country. And I think because we grew up in a very like French speaking, culturally influenced like household, it was always very confusing because we would go to France every year, and we've always had a my parents have always had a place there. But it was like, but you're not French, and don't forget it.
Mm.
Not from them. They would never say that to us.
Yeah.
Actually, my father today is naturalized. He's French as well. I mean, as well, he is French today, my father, in the sense that he has the citizenship, he has the passport, but I don't, and we didn't, like, as his children. And I think as a teenager, I probably realized I'm not French, because as a child, it was, I guess, maybe you don't question these things so much as a child,
Yeah.
but like, being in school and everyone, has these references that I don't have, cultural references. I'm not part of the majority religion in Egypt. The majority religion is Islam, it's Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have different celebrations, and um, we do things a little differently. So that was always there. But I don't think there were a lot of kids, especially because I went to an international American school.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of like French speaking people. And it was like, okay, but it was just confusing. I think it was as a teenager when I realized there's no particular incident I can think of, but there was a realization of like, oh wait, I'm not French. I'm heavily French influenced,
Mm.
but I'm not French. Um, and when I lived in France, I actually had the opportunity, not the opportunity, but I had the option, I guess, of staying a little longer and then applying for citizenship. But to be honest with you, as an adult, like moving back there, I studied and I worked there, and I couldn't wait to leave by the end of it. Keeping in mind as well, I was living there during like difficult times for France as a country, going through a lot of tension and changes. And but yeah, the reality is I couldn't wait to leave. I still love France, I still love Paris, but yeah, I was kind of like ready for the next adventure. Let's put it that way.
Hey, like I said, it's relatable. So
Yeah.
let's step away from your your personal journey, but it's still part of your personal journey. But let's go to your creative journey now. You decided to take your life experiences and take it up a notch and start sharing with the world, but not just sharing with the world, but also looking for fellow travelers on this journey and using it to do something much bigger than just yourself. And that was how I believe that played a role in you getting to a podcast. But I don't think I did a good job in getting there to the podcast. But how did you come up with the title of your podcast? I love that title. That's just like a chef's keys to the title. So how did you come up with the title of your podcast? And what is the full inspiration of you coming up with? What's the full inspiration behind you starting that podcast?
I think you did a good job capturing it, actually, because the driving force, let's say, not the inspiration, but the driving force behind it was like, you know what, I'm confused about who the hell am I, in terms of like these different religions and these cultures that I grew up in and these languages. And I'm like, you know what, I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one because so many people around me are also maybe struggling is not the right word. I mean, you have periods of struggling with your identity, but like have complicated, complex identities. And I just thought, like, you know what, I would love to actually record some of these conversations that I get to have with friends. That's kind of where the idea started. Inbetweenish as a name, I think, came about because the ish is something, just as a suffix. Yeah, it's a suffix. Is something that I've always like related to, because I've always felt like, I am Brazilian Egyptian, born in France. And I've always felt the ish is like how I relate most to my countries and my cultures, because there's a lot of things that's culturally that I'm not aware of when it comes to both my cultures, Brazilian and Egyptian. And I felt like ish was a very good captures that really well. And I have a lot of friends around me that also are ishes, different versions of it. And so I felt like, Inbetweenish kind of represents that in a not taking itself too seriously and not, because I don't want to define what the ish is, but it's in between different things. And for Inbetweenish, originally I wanted to start a podcast years ago. I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of different podcasts on different topics. And I wanted to start a podcast about third culture kids. I came across this term, third culture kids, which I thought I was when I was in France, when I was at university. I was working on a project and I came across this term. The project had nothing to do with cultural influences, but it was a furniture product that I was designing.
Okay.
And and I had to like interview certain people, and the common thing between them was this ish. We were all kind of like different, grew up in a place where we weren't from, or amongst different religions, or these different things. So came across the term years later. It was still on my mind, like, I want to do something about this. And then when I sat down to work on the podcast, eventually I was like, you know what, third culture kids is a bit, I felt like maybe I should explain what it is. Third culture kid, by definition, means someone who grew up in a culture that is different to the culture of their parents. And the assumption here is that the parents come from the same cultures, from the same culture, one culture. So you are between your parents' culture and the cultures that you grew up in. And so therefore you are this third culture and accumulation of these different cultures, your parents and the countries you've lived in. And I was like, you know what? But there are different kind of cultural experiences that maybe aren't about living in different cultures. Maybe it's being of mixed race, like me, for example. Brazilian, Egyptian. They're two different people. Um, like completely. They're also very diverse people.
Yep.
There's also third culture kids is usually associated to, or used in the context associated to, children of diplomatic kids, for example. So parents who work in foreign diplomacy and they work at the embassy of a certain country, and so they have kids that grow up there, but they're of this other culture. And so the culture that you speak and you have at home is very different than the culture that you practice outside of the house, is very different than the culture that you are maybe schooled in and study in. And not just in the context of diplomatic kids, but also kids that have had to move around because of their parents' jobs. For example, if you work in a big corporation and they have offices all over the world, and they're like, okay, well, now we're gonna place you here, and then there's also kids whose parents go on missions abroad to kind of like preach Christianity,
like missionaries.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also, I don't like this term, but they're called military brats. And it's kids who have had to move around again. It's usually tied to the parents' profession. And third culture kids is just one of many different kind of experiences that you can have of different cultures as a child. And so I was doing some research and I came across this more inclusive term, I thought, called cross-cultural kids. And it was a term put together by, it was an American, it is an American sociologist, and it's Ruth Van Recken. And basically, cross-cultural kids includes third culture kids, but it also includes children who have been internationally adopted. It also includes children of immigrants. Because the immigrant experience is very different than the third culture kid experience. As a third culture kid, you're usually an expat in a country. As an immigrant, you're trying to assimilate into a new culture, and you're eventually, the idea is to get a citizenship in the country, to have belonging in that country, right? There's also children of refugees. These are all then there's different types, there's different categories within cross-cultural kids, but these are all the different experiences that you can have across different cultures. And there's an emphasis on kids because the way that you experience a culture as a child is very different than when you experience it as an adult. When you move as an adult, you have agency over, you know what, I like the part of this culture and I'm going to integrate myself into this and try to understand more, and I want to make friends here. But as a child, you don't, first of all, you don't have the choice of moving to a country. Very often it's just like, well, parents decided, good, gotta go, gotta follow. And the experience of being educated, and even like when you learn languages as a child, it's very different than when you learn languages as an adult. So there's a lot of emphasis on kids because like when you experience different cultures as a child, it's just very different. And by child here, I mean like from when you're born until you're a teenager, basically, your developmental years are very formative years. So yeah, that's where the idea for Inbetweenish came from. I really wanted to capture stories of people who were exposed to different cultures, to different religions, to different languages, to different ethnicities during their developmental years. I speak to adults, not children, on the podcast, but it would be interesting to do an episode with children at some point who are actually experiencing this live and not like reflecting on it as an adult. But yeah, there's, it's funny because I think you probably have this experience too with white label American. When I meet someone who's cross-cultural, there's an immediate connection. It doesn't matter if they're not Brazilian Egyptian. Usually they're not Brazilian Egyptian. There aren't a ton lying around. But you immediately have this connection of like, I know you your brain gets confused between different languages. I know
True.
you struggle with certain things, like your love for food that you were explaining in the beginning. I think that's very reflective of your different cultural influences, you know?
Yeah.
So there's common experiences no matter what the cultures that you're exposed to are, but there's common experiences to being cross-cultural. And those are the stories I kind of want to capture, because I think it could be very, someone from the outside looking in can be like, oh, well, that seems great. Like, you're exposed to all these different things, you speak different languages. Oh, that's what do you have to complain about? But like, there isn't, there's a lot of identity crisis that comes with this.
Yeah.
You asked me about feeling like an outsider. I've never felt like I belonged anywhere, So my whole life has been a series of feeling like an outsider. And that's okay, actually, because I've met other outsiders everywhere I go. Those are the people I connect with the most, So yeah, Inbetweenish is essentially about bringing these confused people together. And I like to say this on the podcast, like, I very much welcome confusion. I think it's just a part of life when you're cross-cultural. And yeah, let's just sit down and have a conversation about your childhood trauma. No, it's not your childhood trauma, but like, yeah, let's talk about your experiences, let's hash it out.
Thank you for that. And yeah, listeners, if you weren't convinced, let me tell you, go listen to Inbetweenish. It's worth your time. Trust me, it's a great podcast. I love it. And if you have any experience to share, feel free to share with us. Go hit our contact button. There's also the microphone there. Leave an audio recording. 2 minutes. You can leave as many recordings, but if you want to talk longer than 2 minutes, it will cut you off. I don't control it. I mean, I technically can't control it, but I just want to leave your message in 2 minutes. So I could talk to you all day, but but we have to start wrapping this up. This has been lovely. We'll definitely have to have a part 2 where we'll talk about shawarmas and more. But yeah, people know that.
Can I just say something about that? Because as a Brazilian, because meat is very big in Brazil, like, churrascaria and that culture, and it's also quite big in the Middle East.
Yeah,
I'm actually vegetarian. I've been vegetarian for such a long time, and one of the questions I get a lot when I tell people I'm Brazilian Egyptian, it's like, oh, you must know all the good, like, churrascarias, like the meat places. And I'm like, actually, no, I hate to disappoint you, but no, I don't. People legitimately like turn around and are like, you're not a real Brazilian if you don't eat meat. I don't eat meat. I don't play soccer.
I can imagine that reaction in Middle East, especially. Because I know Brazilian restaurants are quite big over there too. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But since we're already talking food, let's just dive straight into it. So you've already told us you're vegetarian, and when it comes to cuisine, what is your favorite go-to cuisine? You've lived in a couple of places. So vegetarians, that does not mean they don't have good food. Does not mean they don't have food that's delicious. So where does your favorite vegetarian cuisine come from? And your number one go-to cuisine is what? Betray one place now.
I don't know if this will surprise you or not, but Ethiopian cuisine is just the best in my opinion.
Man, I love Ethiopian and vegetarian too. Man, Ethiopians stay winning.
Yeah.
They stay winning with everybody. It's hard.
They have amazing food, honestly.
All right, Egyptians and Brazilians, start writing your complaint right now. I will give you.
They also have amazing
Beatrice
food.
email. I will forward. I will give you. Write your petition. She's not real. Let me tell you, she's not. Yes, I agree with you guys. She's not real.
No, it's funny. No.
Nah, I'm messing with you.
No, I know. No, I do love Egyptian food. Honestly, it's one of the things I love about Egyptian culture. I mean, like everything, I have a bone to pick sometimes with certain elements of my cultures, but Egyptian food,
who doesn't?
As well, yeah, I know, right? Like, as well as Brazilian food, I find amazing. But in terms of my favorite cuisine, I have to hand it to Ethiopians. Like, they really know, their vegetables, and their spices, and it's just like, it's really good. But yeah, Egyptian food is amazing. right now it's Ramadan.
Yeah.
I don't practice Ramadan, but the way we do it in our household is we make it an Egyptian cultural month, meaning
Oh.
we watch lots of Egyptian TV shows. Egyptian TV novellas are very common, and a lot of them come out in during the Ramadan season.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, it's kind of like our Egyptian culture month. We try to eat more Egyptian food. We listen to a lot of like Egyptian Arabic music in general, and then I find myself speaking Arabic more, just because we focus more on it this month.
Oh,
Um,
all right.
and Egyptian food is amazing. Some of it is definitely an acquired taste. I will say that, but it's really good, honestly,
Well,
and as well as Brazilian food.
you have
It's
to
my comfort
send me
food.
some Egyptian telenovelas later on. So send me on our usual channel. Send me some recommendations for me to
Absolutely,
check out.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
maybe I'll add one of them to my Patreon discussions. My friend Ashwin,
Oh, that would
I
be
know he
great.
will love to break down. Maybe I'll give Ashwin one that will explode his brain because yeah, if you listen to our breakdowns of The Last of Us, you know why I'm trying to get Ashwin to break down something like Egyptian, and he's gonna be like, "No," I'm like, yeah, you're gonna watch this. Yeah. So everyone who's been on this podcast is considered a dancer. If you claim you don't dance, we'll stop recording and kick you out of the show right now. So it's too late for you to claim you don't dance. You're already on the podcast. You've recorded with us for over an hour. So yeah, we know you dance. You can't deny it. And I mean, you have French. You have a sprinkle of French in you. You have Egyptian. You have Brazilian. All those places they dance. So come on, it's too late.
Mm.
So when it comes to music, we need you to give us at least 3 artists that can keep you dancing for at least an hour. Now there's a
Oh,
catch. There's a catch,
yeah.
because we know France. France. Let me see. France got some. They got some good artists there that are on my playlist. Stromae, yeah, Stromae, yep, yep,
Oh,
yep.
love Stromae.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's my boy.
He's not French though.
I
He is
know, I
Belgian,
know.
but he does sing in French.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. But just in case you're going to name Stromae, he's out. You can put him on your list.
Oh, he's out. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, got
that's
it,
the
got
point.
it.
You can't
Okay,
name the most popular artists like uh
okay,
like
okay. You
Rihanna.
can
You can't
veto
name the
then.
Beyonces. You can't name any Afrobeat. Yeah,
Okay.
you're all out. Now, you can give us one from Brazil. You can give us one from Egypt. You can give us one from France, or you can give us one from your current base, Dubai. We'll take that. I don't know anybody from who sings in Dubai. Do people Dubai? So there's so much money there, so there might not be any need for somebody to be singing there. I don't know.
Oh no, no, they
So,
definitely love their
hey,
music too.
I know, I know. They might be having musicians from other places come sing there. That's the point. So give us at least 3 artists that can keep you dancing
Mm.
for an hour.
Um. So I'm very much a music person. I think music is my love language.
See, I know.
And in terms of dancing, mm, well, Brazilian would have to be Kaoma. I think like also most of the world knows Lambada and the song Lambada. And Kaoma is the group. That's if you want to dance. But in terms of an artist, I would recommend. And there's dancing and there's not dancing. It's Lagoon. So it's Lagum, but pronounced Lagoon. And I actually have a Brazilian music is like my my go-to, I think, on any bad day because it'll always put me in a good mood. Um,
I can see
so
that.
yeah. Yeah, it's just very lively and it's upbeat. It's even if it's a sad song, like it's expressed in such a beautiful way. And
Hmm.
to be honest with you, I don't know, like I wonder how you feel about this in terms of your languages, but I feel like English is a great language to communicate in, but when it comes to expressing emotions and it comes to expressing desire and it comes to expressing, I don't know, the more complicated things in life, I think I have to hand it to the Portuguese as well as the Arabic language. I think, and I'm biased, of course I'm biased,
Mm.
but I think they have a different way of expressing things that is much more
Hey,
soulful, humane. I
mm,
don't know what the word is. But yeah.
well, my
Um
my favorite football commentators when it comes to shouting goal when the goal is scored. Hey, gotta be Arabic, man. When the Arabic commentators do
I've
it,
heard that a lot. Yeah.
nobody beats that, man. I mean, 2 minutes
Yeah.
later, the goal has been scored. That guy is still shouting goal, 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 goal.
That's
That's like,
very
hey,
true.
hey, hey, man. I mean, yeah, even if it's against your team, you're there like, man, it's still sweet, man. I'm enjoying it. I'm happy too. You're supposed to be crying.
Yeah, I've heard this so often. It's true. Like, especially when it comes
That's how you
to,
know the expression of
yeah,
the language is so sweet. You just be
yeah.
there like, man, I'm angry they scored against me, but there's something about the way this language lands. It's just like, yeah, yeah, man.
Mm,
Yeah, you start smiling. You're like, everybody's just like, man,
yeah.
this is so funny, man. Share that video again.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I agree with you.
yeah, but I do have a lot of Arabic songs on my playlist. I do have.
Yeah, so for Arabic, I would say, Amr Diab, I think he represents,
Is
he
Egyptian?
he's Egyptian. Yeah,
Okay.
he represents Egyptian music quite well, I think.
Oh, you have to send me
And
the
then
spelling of his name.
I'll send you the spelling. There's a specific song that, like, I think anyone who listens to the song will probably like it. It's not his song actually. It's Talad it, which means three beats,
Oh, okay.
like beat of your heart,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very catchy song. I think like it was a huge success like all over, and yeah, I think if anyone needs an introduction to Arabic music, it's a nice introduction. But
Okay.
Amr Diab as an artist, I think, is your go-to artist for Egyptian OG music. And then French, I would say, so like Stromae, this person's not actually French, but Belgium, but sings in French. It's Angèle, spelled like it's angel basically, but in French. So angel like in English, but with an
Mm-hmm.
extra E. And
Oh, I might know that person.
Angèle, yeah, she's been on, what is it? Color, like the Color Studio. They feature like um, cool up and coming artists,
Hmm.
and yeah, she's been on there. So it's
Okay.
it's. I really like her
I
stuff.
wouldn't be
Angèle,
surprised if she's on my playlist already.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, she's great. Honestly, highly recommend. Like Stromae, she also like some of her songs are kind of like a social commentary,
Okay.
um, and I really appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, she's very talented.
Oh, cool. And yeah, Stromae. My daughter already knows Stromae songs. I'm like,
Mm,
it might be too young for you, but hey, it's good music. You gotta know it.
it is good music, yeah,
If I know it, you
absolutely.
gotta know it. So
Yeah.
there you go. So she knows one
Yeah.
or two of his songs. So
Mm,
yeah. So before I ask you the final question, you mentioned something earlier that I was like, oh, I gotta come back to this. So you said you're
mm.
a Disney fan because you love
Yeah.
a lot of Disney movies. So I was just curious, what's your favorite Disney movie?
Ah. Um
You can name two if you want. Since I like you, I'll let you have more than one.
I mean, it's not that I'm a Disney kid. I
Okay,
grew up
Disney
watching
kid.
Disney. I
Yeah,
think
but
any
yeah,
90s
you're still a
kids
Disney
like.
fan. Don't deny. Don't
I am. I
treat
am. I
yourself.
am.
Don't spoil.
Yeah.
I spoil myself. I'm a Star Wars. I'm now a Star Wars guy. I denied it for long, but I'm watching the Mandalorian. I'm gonna watch the new stuff coming, and yeah. But Andor is still
Mm,
my favorite because that's really adult stuff. So,
yeah.
but I'm a Marvel. Marvel, you can't take me away from Marvel. There's no divorce happening. Nope.
Mm.
But
No,
that's
Marvel is great as
yeah.
well. I just didn't grow up with it. But yeah, it is great. And they've been upping their game, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, absolutely. More diversity, which is good. Um, favorite Disney, this is so cliche, but The Lion King, I think, is
I had a feeling you
unbeatable. I
say that.
mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not like a girly girl princess type of thing. So for me, it's always like I love the portrayal of animals and So The Lion King is perfect. I think all my favorite Disney movies are about like the animal kingdom, rather than human stories.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's a great one. And then another recent one, I was very pleasantly surprised. I think Disney has peaked in the 90s, but I think Encanto, that came out like
Oh,
just a few years
Encanto.
ago,
I've watched
that
that.
was really
I've watched
good.
that too many
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
I've watched all the
I'm sure
Disney
your
stuff.
daughter's like, Daddy, Daddy, come on. Let's,
We've watched. I don't know. What's the one with the red turning red? Did you watch that?
no.
Oh,
What's
you
that one?
the where the girl changes into the panda. It's set in the
Oh, I haven't
nineties.
seen it, but
Oh,
it's on my list.
yeah,
Is that a Disney movie?
yeah, it is. It wasn't released.
Oh.
It was only released on the streaming. I
Mm.
thought that should have
So you know
gotten
how
a
I came
wide
across
release.
that because, oh, like, recently.
Sorry.
It was like recently released?
Last year.
Last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I actually came across that movie because I was looking for movies or documentaries that kind of like portray the third culture or cross-cultural
yeah.
experience. And that movie came up for kids. Like it breaks down this kind of concept of existing across different cultures. But I haven't seen it yet, but it is on my list. Yeah.
It does a good job. I don't know if
Yeah.
kids will get it because when if you and I watch it, you see something else. My daughter loves it.
Okay.
It introduces kids to the 90s because the music, everything is in the 90s. The boy
Oh,
bands and all
cool.
that is 90s. But it's a totally different movie for adults. And I was like, dang, they did
But
this? Wow. Okay.
you know, uh, that's the thing though. Like when you watch these, whether it's Disney or Pixar movies as an adult, it's so
hmm
different. Like I
Oh, yeah.
recently
I'll
rewatched
be almost
Shrek,
crying all the
and I'm
time.
like, yeah.
That's why I'm like, I don't want to watch all this. It'll make me cry all the time. Enough. How many times I got to
Well,
cry
I
in a
mean,
day?
there's a lot of like, there's a lot of jokes in there that are for adults sometimes, and
Yeah.
they're. I mean, kids are not meant to understand those. Like I recently rewatched Shrek, and I was like, oh my goodness, like that's a lot of a lot of interesting innuendo there, you know. So I think like yeah, when you rewatch some of these movies as an adult, you're like, yeah, that's a lot of messaging in there, you know. But it's cool. I think they probably keep in mind that like it's not just kids who are watching it; it's kids dragging their adult parents to
Yeah.
watch it. So you know, it's good to have a little something in there for them as well.
Well, last thing on Disney, I try to show my daughter Lion King. Oh, she watched it for like
Mm.
5 minutes. Like, turn it off. Oh, I
Really?
don't watch this.
Oh
Well, we
no.
watched Moana 1,000 times. We watched Turning Red as soon as it came on. It came out. I was like, new movie. We watched the whole weekend. I was like, golly, man. I love the movie, but as soon as it ends, play the game. I'm like, man, this is not how the
Hmm.
weekend was supposed to go. But back to back to back to back to back to back the whole weekend. I was like, all right, you know what? I need to start a new channel where I'll be like, the women are forcing men not to have any. The men are losing their rights. This how the villain is born. This how the villain is born.
Origin stories of a villain.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Nah,
no, but
nah.
I'm so surprised
Well,
to hear that she didn't like The Lion King.
yeah, I was
Hmm.
surprised too. She was just like, nah, I'm not watching this. But she's watched
Mm.
everything from what's the little girl in Hawaii with the alien.
Oh, Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, Lilo and Stitch. She watched the whole
Mm.
series at one point in time, and then the older she got, we tried to watch one. It's like, turn it off. I was like, God, leave this kid. Okay. Well, she's watched Shira, which is way old, too old for her, but we've completed the whole series. I was like, oh, this show is really good. I'm the one watching it now. I'm like, oh, this show is really good. She picks up shows like that. I'm like, God damn, this show's really good. I'm about to join this. And she's like, I want to dress up like Shira for Halloween. And then next time, I'm like, God, no, girl, just pick one costume. I can't keep up with all them heroes. I'm like, maybe I should have just stuck to introducing you to. Maybe I should have just introduced one princess. Nah, I did too much. Now I've introduced to like 5,000, and man, it's too much. But yeah, they're doing a good job though with the presentation and the stories.
Mm.
But Turning Red was really good. That's a really good one. I've gotten the newer ones that came out, but they've had some good ones. Yeah, but that movie, yeah, should definitely be on your list for the project you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually. So, I mean, I launched a newsletter earlier this year, and
Yeah.
and I have a section where I kind of, recommend edutainment, trending edutainment,
Mm-hmm.
and it's on my list of things to watch. So if I like it, I will recommend it. But like based on your recommendation, I should definitely move it up the list and watch it very soon.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it's cool that kids movies are addressing some of these topics. I think, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So let's bring it to an end here. Can't thank you enough for giving me your time and sharing your day or your evening over there with us. So
Thank you.
to final question, what would you like to leave the audience with? It's your freestyle moment. You
Oh,
go ahead and yeah,
no
up
pressure.
to you. No pressure. Some one of those questions I just throw at the guests.
I don't know if I have any words of wisdom. I mean, I think I think when it comes to these topics you're addressing on White Label American and topics that I also cover on Inbetweenish, I think like more dialogue around these things is very important because mostly to kind of like realize, you're not alone and you can share the good and the bad of these experiences because there is good and bad. And I think above all is I think something that we all millennials and all generations are struggling with, but like, it's okay to be confused. Like there's no blueprint for any of this, you know? Um so yeah, I think that's what I would say. I mean this is a terrible wrap up, but like
Nah,
yeah, that's what I would say. Like it's okay to be confused because that's just life, you know?
it's not a terrible wrap up. Trust me. And yes, it's okay to be confused. And it's I think that too many of us grow up thinking that we must all have the answers, otherwise we are doing
Yeah.
bad, and that's why our platforms exist to show that. Yeah, it's okay
Mm.
to be confused, and it's okay to not have all the answers, and we're on a journey to figure things out, and
Yeah.
it's okay to not figure it out all out in one day. You're not,
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
not the end of the world,
Absolutely.
but you can keep moving. You know.
I think one of the things that I mean, I mentioned my grandma a little bit during this interview, but my grandma played a very, very big role in my life, and we were very close. And I think when I was in my mid-20s, I was sitting on her bed crying, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm so confused, and I'm almost 25, and like, shouldn't I know what I want to do with my life?" And my grandma was exactly 50 years older than me, and so she turns to me and says, "Honey, I'm almost 75 and I'm still confused and I don't know what I'm doing with my life. You don't have to figure anything out. Like, confusion is just a part of life."
Mm.
And I don't think I realized the wisdom in her words at the time, but it's definitely something that I very strongly hold on to and believe now. It's like, yeah, it's just a part of it. You got to live with it, and we all go through it. And I truly do believe that even people who portray that they have all their shit together, it's a lot of times a front. And there's nothing wrong with, not knowing things, Um, yeah, so that's I guess my grandma's words, like that's just part of life.
Hey,
Confusion.
grandma wisdom there. Shout out to your grandma. So,
Thank
please
you.
let the audience know where they can find you and your awesome work.
Oh, so my podcast is Inbetweenish. You can find it on any platforms. It's yeah, Inbetweenish without any dashes, spelled exactly what it sounds like. And we also have a website, www.inbetweenish.net. And yeah, I have a newsletter that's we also have a blog associated to Inbetweenish, but a newsletter. It's called The Quest, and basically it's every month I give you a series of things and you kind of like go on a quest to discover your own cultural identity in a sense. exploring your confusion, basically. And yeah, that's where you can find me. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. So once again, Mbana, Dankeschön, Shukran. I've forgotten the one from the Gambia. Damn, I used to remember. I need to go. I'll write them down now. Nche, that's from Mali, and I've gotten a whole bunch of thank yous. I always write them down. And
well, let me add merci to you.
oh, merci.
And
I should know that one. That was pretty easy. But I try to drop French. I'm like, I try to be sophisticated with other people.
And
what's Japanese? Nagatomo.
is it?
No. Is that Nagatomo for Japanese?
I don't know.
Arigato.
Arigato. Yeah, arigato.
I watch a lot of anime, so I should know that easily.
Yeah.
Come on. That's, I was going to film anime right there. Can't film anime community,
Well, I'll also add obrigado.
Obrigado. Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
too. Portuguese. Yeah, Ronaldo de Lima was my boy. So, yeah, just for his sake. So, yeah, but anyway, we appreciate you. Keep doing awesome. And yeah, we love your work. And everyone listening, please don't forget to check out Inbetweenish and keep supporting us, all indie podcasters. We need your love. We need your support, showing the love. And we'll see you next week with another episode. Thank you for the privilege of your company. Thanks for listening to White Label American. If you enjoyed the show, please give a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on all social media platforms. Visit the White Label American website for links for donations, episodes, feedback, guests, merch, and newsletter. Don't forget to download the free White Label American app on the Google Play Store and Apple coming soon. Thank you for the privilege of your company.